Well, hey, it's Stephen Rothberg. I am the founder and chief visionary officer of College Recruiter, job search site. At College Recruiter, we believe that every student and recent graduate deserves a great career and that it should be easy for employers to hire them, whether it's a few here or there, or as we're going to talk about today, in volume, at scale, dozens, hundreds, sometimes even thousands a year. I am really excited to be able to spend the next little bit talking with my longtime friend, Ward Christman. Ward, I think we've known each other for 15 years or something like that. We probably met at a job board conference in some Marriott
Yes.
ballroom someplace. For the listeners who might not know that much about you or HR Tech Advisors, HR Tech Alliances, maybe you can give them a little bit of an intro.
Yeah, happy to, Steve. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting.
Cool.
Yeah, 30 years in the HR tech space, amazing. And, even pre-internet, really. So it's been quite a fun ride. But my passion is around helping the HR technology companies and the vendor executives connect and collaborate so they can win more business with their partners and hopefully retain their customers as well. Not easy, but it's fun. And that's what we do. HR Tech Alliances is a community platform that is leveraged both for events as well as research to find the right partners so your common customers get what they deserve. And HR Tech Advisors is kind of an ecosystem navigator service, if you will, to help the vendor execs figure out how do you navigate so you don't either go off the edge of the world or Pennsylvania, where I'm from, we're famous for our potholes. So you got to know how to drive around them, otherwise you end up with a flat tire or worse.
Yeah, and for the listeners who kind of want to get like a little bit of a flavor for what you do before maybe jumping into a pothole or into some lake or whatever, you have basically like a community gathering. I don't know if it's every Friday, but it seems to be like a lot of Fridays. Maybe tell people about that and how they can get more information, and then they can maybe pop on the next one or two of those.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Every Friday we have a open, free to attend. We call it a town hall. And each week we send out a town crier, which has a curated list of news about the HR technology industry, whether it be new investments, new products, uh, events and things like that, where the community connect. And then we also collaborate with some of the existing conferences to help bring the vendor community together, again, to connect and collaborate, become partners, or to improve the partnerships they already have. And it's all about that common customer, either making them happier or finding new ones.
Yeah.
And doing that face-to-face sometimes really helps. And that's a big part of what we do globally. And it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Awesome. And hopefully pays the bills. That because if you can have fun, pay the bills, leave the world a better place. What else is there?
That's right.
Couple of topics that I wanted to dive in with you in this interview. I'll just hit the first one first. Obviously, the people who are watching this have a particular interest in high volume hiring. I talk about that in terms of dozens, hundreds, thousands a year. Same position, maybe similar positions, customer service, sales. What sorts of HR tech tools, systems are you seeing that really stand out, that it's like, wow, that is awesome, or whew, I think we should stay away from that?
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. In terms of what stands out, without naming specific names, I mean, there's just in our platform alone, we're tracking over 55,000 HR tech vendors, and some of them have a dozen or 2 dozen solutions. So there's a lot of HR tech out there, and that's just the stuff that we know about. There's more than that. And I mean, you look at spreadsheets, some people accomplish a lot in that, but high volume, you can't do it that way anymore.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm seeing, and I believe others from our point of view can see, is the kind of the richness of the ecosystems growing. I mean, you have a lot of the core HRs like the SAPs and Workdays and Oracles and UKGs of the world And then around that is a vibrant ecosystem that companies rely on, especially for high volume, because there's no one silver bullet that,
Hmm.
helps you hire all the people you need and, different types of people. It's impossible, really. So I, I think to answer your question a little more straight up is the technology, I think that's finally here after waiting 30 years. How do you start with the end in mind, like a quality of hire metric? And I mean, even if it's somebody that's on a part-time or you know um, not a long-term position, like a lot of hourly roles are, or at least
Right.
expected to be long-term, or that high volume, which tends to be hourly. You still need to know, were they a good fit? If they didn't show up the first day, they probably weren't. If they lasted for 6 months, that might be amazing. And but why? And the data that's out there in these systems can be capitalized. And I think some of the newer vendors are coming out and actually trying to give you a better view of that to analyze and improve. That's the home runs now that I'm excited about, because we've gone from what CPC, the pay, cost per click, cost per applicant is kind of, I think, here now. And then, the next evolution is becoming probably like a cost per hire.
Uh-huh.
If you're maybe
Or
not,
cost per quality application is, I mean,
that's right.
neither
That's
of
the
us know.
next.
We're both looking into our crystal balls. I'm
Exactly.
thinking it's cost per quality hire, with quality defined as, did you interview them? Because that's a bright, objective line. You're
For
not
high
going to
volume
have,
particular, yeah.
yeah,
Right. Did they show up to the interview? Did they were you able to interview them? Right. That sometimes a huge milestone in your recruiting process.
yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, the quality can vary completely in terms of measuring that, but you need to do it. You need to know, so you can go back to the sourcing strategies and everything else, what's working, what isn't. And so I'm excited about some of the big data companies that are coming out, and certainly with AI and other resources to big data, you can do some really exciting things. And I would start with the end in mind. Again, what do you want? You want a good quality hire that sticks around, does a good job, and can help keep your customers happy, and being
So,
leveraging good technology
so
to
would it be
know if you've
fair to
got there.
say that one of the tools that these, especially these high volume employers, should have in their tech stack would be like an assessment? Um, you know, Candidate comes, applies or starts to apply. You assess their fit, their skills, etc. In a modern scientific way. Not just, do you seem to be a nice person? Do you also like golfing, if the job has nothing to do with golfing? Like, that's like the old style stuff. But actually, like, this is what it takes to be successful in our environment. And we're going to do an assessment to see
Yes.
in 20, 30, 40 minutes if that likely is you.
Oh, fit, absolutely. The fit assessments out there, some are very short, and some are very deep. Depends on your company culture, and that's part of the fit, right? Is how much does it matter? Do you want to make it easy to get into the company, or not as easy, hoping that they'll qualify out? It's technology can, there's some really neat assessment tech that out there. And from our view, it's part of it is, do they fit into your ecosystem of tech? Again, if you have this great new shiny object, and you know maybe a division of your company ends up buying it to try it or pilot it, that's a great way to start. But if the other parts of the company don't even know that's happening, you may have a lot of this going on out there. And then how do you bring it together with the rest of your tech stack so that you can do things like good candidate experience as they apply, get through the assessment, and then once they're on board, smooth onboarding, all that stuff. The systems need to talk together, or work
Yeah.
together and talk to each other, so that there's a good experience for that person, and hopefully again they'll stay long past that
Yeah.
first day.
So speaking, I'm going to do like an awkward pivot. Speaking of talking to each other. So, you know, the listeners of this podcast, I think, are likely to be talent acquisition professionals, senior vice president talent acquisition, talent marketing specialists, folks like that, especially those who are looking to get into high volume. Maybe their place of employment has been hiring 5 to 10 a year, and this year they're going to hire 50, 100, 200, something along those lines. Maybe they were in a lower volume role, they've moved into a higher volume role, and they're upskilling. But regardless, one of the things that you and I talked about just before jumping on was communicating or talking with the C-suite, the vice presidents, the directors. And I think that you feel like that is something that should be done, that those who are selecting these tools should be communicating what tools they're using and why. Maybe you can tell the listeners, am I right? Do you think that's a good idea? And if so, why?
Well, completely, you're right, as always, Stephen. But
I was ripping words off from you. That wasn't my opinion.
No, well,
I listen and hopefully I learn.
Yeah, well, and about a year ago, I did a behind the doors closed presentation for a group out of New York called the Conference Board, and they bring together TA leaders from all very large companies. And I said, I'll do it, but I want to know who the audience is and what are they doing or not doing with their companies. And without obviously naming names, it was not surprising, but also disappointing at the same time that these large companies that everybody admires and say, boy, we want to be like them. It's hard to have your ducks in a row. And to your point, if you haven't been in that environment, you're pulled into it now as a TA leader, or maybe you're lucky enough to be in a metrics or analytics role. Are the other people, do you know what systems you have? Do they, not only the people at the company, which, in terms of your question is, do they know what is out there? Because it may not be used, company-wide, or maybe there's a pilot going on, as I mentioned earlier. It's amazing. The larger the companies are and the more spread out they are, there tends to be factions, oh, we want this recruiting system, or we want this assessment, and all of a sudden you have too much to bring it together and understand what is your cost for hiring or your quality of hire, things like that. So it really, having that internal communication amongst your C-suite and right down to the hiring managers is, I believe, critical. Not only what do you have already? I mean, all the years I've been doing this, it's so amazing how some of the division heads or TA leaders, we got to fix this problem. We're going to go use this system. It looks perfect. They get it, and nobody else knows about it. And then somebody else does something similar. It's before you have chaos. And so having that kind of central view and then sharing it internally on a regular basis. I mean, what we found out from these large companies, about half of these Fortune 500 had a list of their tech stack. I mean, not just TA tech, but other, HR tech stuff. They had a list that was maintained, and then about half of those didn't even circulate it internally. And then very few of them, even the vendors on that list, don't even know they're in the same recipe together. So if you're making a soup and you want it to be delicious for everybody, you need to know what's in there. And that's what's going on. I think there's a huge opportunity to and a responsibility for the vendors in particular, because employers struggle. How do they get their vendors to play nice in the sandbox?
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but that's part of our mission, is to help bring together the vendors so they communicate and hopefully collaborate, and then discuss what are the common problems we have. And high volume hiring is full of them, right? So bring the group together and sort it out.
Awesome. Well, Ward, thank you so much. This has been great. For people who want to reach Ward, linkedin.com/in/Ward Christman. Cheers, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. Enjoyed it.